Welcome to another episode of the speakEZ podcast presented by speakEZ and the Outbound Recruiting Academy. Today, we're thrilled to introduce Dana Wilkins, a senior recruiter with over 15 years in the IT and engineering recruitment space. Dana's mission extends beyond finding the perfect match. She's on a quest to educate hiring managers on the profound impact of recruiting on brand and reputation. She's well-versed in every aspect of the hiring journey. Dana creates positive and memorable experiences for both candidates and clients. And I'm so excited to explore the dynamic world of talent acquisition with Dana Wilkins today. So without further ado, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
We always start every single podcast with the first question. Can you share a little bit about your journey into the world of recruiting? What initially sparked your interest in the field and led you to become a recruiting thought leader?
I think as I've learned as I've gone through this, I think like a lot of people, I sort of fell into it. I came out of college with a degree in history, but a desire to work where I was interacting with people on a regular basis. And I fell into a role. Friend of a friend had a business, small recruiting business, and fell in love with it. And so I kind of went from there. This was, late 90s, and went from that into sort of a corporate search consultancy firm where I was literally just pulling resumes off a fax machine and placing ads in the newspapers and stuff on the weekend. It just became something I was very interested in because you get to meet so many different types of people.
So throughout that 15 years, help me understand a little more about what you currently do right now.
Definitely a senior level talent acquisition recruiter, professional recruiter, technology space for the most part. I would say a majority of my work life for the last 15 to 20 years has been, in IT, either recruiting or in some other capacities here and there. It's been very strongly in technology. And that's, pretty much my technology recruiting experience pretty much runs the gamut from service desk, help desk, software, data, networking, and beyond.
And over those years, the recruiting landscape has undergone significant changes. How have you witnessed the evolution of recruiting practices, especially within the tech field?
Technology. I mean, regardless of the industry that you're recruiting for, it's been the technology. When I first started recruiting for technology people or IT people, it was 1999. So we were coming up on Y2K. We were working with companies that were ramping up hiring for software developers, programmers, people to do things for Y2K. I went from being having, we had maybe one or two tools. We had a Career Builder had just come on the scene, Monster had just come on the scene, but you were still literally potentially had a type of Rolodex of people written on your desk or papers on your desk and business cards from people. It was still very much old school, where now I don't have one piece of paper on my desk. Everything is electronic. It's easy to connect with people. It's easy to find people. It's easy to, text with people. And I think the evolution of it has it's been pretty astounding.
Is there one specific tool, resource, form of technology that you can't live without?
I think obviously a lot, I mean, it's wrapped up, right? Your phone, because I can recruit from my phone now. Whereas even 5 years ago and definitely 10 years ago, that was not possible. I probably spend an inordinate amount of time on LinkedIn just growing my network and reading. And I fall down rabbit holes, just reading like comments and stuff. And then I find people that way. And a lot of times it happens when I'm on my phone. I think one of the other big pieces that really has hit recently, part of speakEZ's offering, is the auto-generated AI tools. I feel like I can be recruiting while I'm sleeping or having fun on the weekend.
So walk me through what that process looks like and how does it help your recruiting and sourcing for the viewers that don't know what that auto-generated AI function is.
It's really kind of a twofold. The ability to do sequencing with messages, right? Because one message is not always enough. But when you're having to manually do multiple messages, it just becomes too time consuming. So the first piece of it is the ability to sequence, which I know there's a lot of intelligence and stuff that goes behind setting that piece up. I saw an almost immediate increase in utilizing the auto-generated messaging through speakEZ on my sequences immediately. I was able to give more robust information for people. I shortened the amount of sequences or the amount of messages, but gave them more information. And I really think that made a difference.
Was it more response rate? Was it more engagement rates? How did you track that?
I would say response rate. I think in this business, even thanks but no thanks messages are still kind of a win if you can get somebody to respond back to you. So I do get a good many thanks but no thanks. But what I've also seen an increase in is I'm not interested, but my friend here is interested. Here's their LinkedIn profile or here's their email.
And if you don't have that good relationship with those candidates, typically referrals don't happen if you don't
Mhm.
give that good candidate experience.
Correct.
How do you maximize your quality and the candidate experience throughout this whole sourcing and recruiting process, utilizing some of the technology that is at our hands?
Yeah, and I would say that's something I chase constantly because if you spend 5 minutes on LinkedIn, you find that candidate experience is probably one of the biggest stumbling blocks for people or for companies. Because at the end of the day, there's always people behind that, people like me. I would say that that candidate experience has increased because I feel like I'm able to better manage setting up calls with them by using the calendar function, where I feel like I'm not cold calling people, right? I'm giving them the balls in their court. I'm giving them that control. I think that helps with the candidate experience. And frankly, I think giving information in the email about the job description link, the stuff, who are we? Getting that up front, I feel like I'm getting a lot of positive feedback from that from candidates.
As we look into the future, what trends do you see shaping the recruiting landscape? Like, how can recruiters stay ahead of the curve and adapt to this ever changing demands of the job market and the recruiting business as a whole?
And the landscape has changed dramatically, definitely over the last 10 years, really definitely over the last 4 years. Um, Everybody went remote. I had been working remote for a very long time, so watching that was interesting, seeing it happen across the board. But people going remote, people wanting to have more of a one of the things I've really seen is people really want to approach their job search and their interview process as much more casual, much more collaborative, much more conversational versus the traditional sitting in a conference room in somebody's office and being asked, standard boilerplate interview questions. I find people really want to get to the nitty-gritty very quickly about the job. They want to know the day in the life. They want to know how big the teams are. They want to know if it's a services type situation, who are the clients? What do they look like? How big are they? I find candidates are much more informed now, I think more than ever. So they're coming and they're asking questions that kind of culminate into them wanting to know the environment and the culture, which I think wasn't necessarily part of it before. Obviously, technology, I think, is changing. I mean, using this tool, for example, it's changed my entire way of recruiting in the last year. And I would say, in addition to that, I think we're seeing updated interview processes because of it. Or I think we're seeing some less cumbersome application, more intelligent parsing of information. And of course, DE&I is a big part. Culture, DE&I are way bigger parts of the conversation than they have ever been.
If that's such a big initiative for companies, what tools, what resources, what's the approach to maximize the D&I space with a candidate experience
Yeah.
and getting that culture at the companies that you've worked for?
Yeah, and it's funny. I ask a lot of candidates if they ask me about culture. I ask them to tell me what it means to them because it's hard to define culture. Everywhere I've worked, it's been a part of it, but I've been here for almost 3 years. I just feel like we do really focus on it and we actually do things for it. One of the talking points, if I understand your question, when I'm talking to candidates, if this is an interest for them, we have a lot of groups. We have employment resource groups we have veterans and women and all different types of kind of diverse groups where people, no matter what their title, they can be a part of this group that's something completely unrelated to work and they feel comfortable there and they get to know other people across the company. I like to share, we have some pretty good video stuff on our website. I try to share day in the life of. I try to talk about my own personal experiences here because I think that's helpful for women, especially in the technology realm. So I think just making it as personable and personal as you can, because I can only speak sometimes to that. I think just letting people know that as a talent acquisition professional, that you are not only just aware of it, but you are actively participating in making it more of a prominent part of how you're hiring.
It's really cool that you say you're active in those affinity groups or
Mhm.
any specific groups that we're talking about, is because a lot of people can talk the talk, but you're actually walking it.
Right.
And that speaks volumes of the
Mhm.
culture, the community, and the vision that you guys and you personally are really driving, which is pretty
Yep.
cool.
Yep. It is. It's fun to see too. The energy here around it is fantastic.
That gets me to the next question.
Okay.
In the world of 2024, creating a strong employer brand is crucial for attracting those top talents.
Yep.
What strategies have you found most effective in building authentic and appealing employer brand, or specifically personal brand as a recruiter?
Right. I think from a personal brand standpoint, I do think it takes time you need to spend time in the places that matter the most. I think for a lot of us, it's going to be LinkedIn because when somebody talks to you and they want to find out about you, that's where they're going to go look you up. Right. I think spending an hour a week, if that's all you have, spending some time on there, looking up topics, reading articles, looking for people, looking for top brands in your space. I think you need to be connected. I think you need to be reading. I think you need to be able to talk to people and candidates and say, oh, yes, I've been seeing that on LinkedIn, right? I think that's one of the things. Diversity, obviously, showing diversity in the organization, um, you know, what the diversity in the organization looks like, from a makeup of the company as it is and how it works in hiring practices. Again, the day in the life of, I get asked so much. So I try to talk to that as much as I can. And I always tell candidates to please talk to the hiring manager when they interview. Ask that question. I think two of the other pieces really center are more, I think, around the HR umbrella realm, which would be sharing benefit details as early as possible with as much detail as possible. And onboarding. I think onboarding is one of the number one reasons people don't successfully launch once they're hired. I think those are all things that branding, if you can do those things well and can talk about them that you're doing them well, then that's where I think that helps.
With that said, let's just say I'm a candidate, I apply. When is too soon to maybe ask those benefit questions? Because think sometimes people are afraid to ask
Yeah.
because candidates don't want to get so far in and then it's not going to hit their expectations, but they
Yep.
also don't want to step over the line and then not get selected for that next stage. Any advice there?
I mean, I think you ask in the first conversation with the recruiter because that benefits are something that heavily affect whether you're interested in the company and the role. It sometimes changes the conversation around compensation, um, depending on what your benefits look like. My best advice is to work very closely with your benefits team and possibly your legal team and come up with a good benefits summary, maybe 1 or 2 page document that you can share very, very early in the process. That is more than just a listing, maybe has a little bit of cost information in there and it details out your PTO and how that works. I think that is best practice. And it seems to help a lot with people. They feel more invested. I think if you get that information to them quicker.
It's crazy to think too, because having conversations with recruiters and just the landscape of where we're at, compensation gets brought up, relatively quickly. What's your expectations? For example, $100,000 at one company could be way different with the big scale of things to another $100,000 at another company based on the specific benefits that they
Yep.
provide or the resources.
Yep.
So having a strong employer brand and being able to work with that HR department is a great, great opportunity for people to get ahead of the game on that
Yep.
and really bridge that gap. That's super exciting.
Yep. Agreed.
What advice would you offer to individuals who are just starting their journey into the recruiting field? Like, what are key principles that they should keep in mind to build a successful career?
I there's so many variables, but I think overall, kind of the overarching things that I sort of not jotted down and noted was learn from your candidates. Ask your candidates questions, not just standard checklist questions, but if it's something that you're going to be talking to more people about, learn about it. You're going to have somebody on the phone that loves to talk about what they do because they're passionate. Ask them questions about it. Learn from the candidates and listen to your hiring managers. Listen to listen. Don't listen to ask, and just listen. Because a lot of times you'll hear things in an intake call, for example, when somebody opens a new opportunity that may not be in the job description. And I think kind of the extension of that is to be a partner in the talent acquisition process. Now, I think that's a lot easier on the, corporate internal side than it is on the agency side, but be a partner and drive that relationship so that sometimes you have to reframe that, right? A lot of people don't see recruiting as they think we're order takers. They think we just jot stuff down and generate people. And I think if you can shift the relationship to being more of a partner, I think that's the biggest thing I think I would go back and tell somebody. That's
Is there any resources going into those conversations? I always got taught lead with data so you
Yep.
can bridge that gap and build that great partnership with the hiring manager. Do you have any tips on how to get a seat at the table, working with those hiring managers, utilizing data, and walk me through some strategies and steps that you've taken?
I think part of it starts kind of with that first thing I learn from your candidates. Find out if people are bowing out of the process early or no matter what stage, but find out why. Is it compensation? Is it benefits? Is it workload? Is it the team? What is it? That's data that you can share. There's a lot of resources out there on salary. Glassdoor is like it's good, the bad, the ugly, but it's pretty good information. There's some tools do like a supply and demand report, insights type stuff. HireEZ, you guys do a great job with, the candidates that have these skills work at these companies and they make roughly this range of compensation. Those are things that you share with that hiring manager because they're facts. This is what we have to work with. And I think then the conversation kind of goes to talking about, okay, here's the data. What do we need to adjust so that you hire the person that you want?
Another topic that came up was passive candidates versus active candidates and
Yeah.
how you present that to the hiring manager. Sometimes I feel hiring managers have two different approaches and encouraging them to be always on the selling mode to the candidates,
Yep.
regardless of if they're active or passive.
Right.
Um, Walk me through your experience with that.
So it is a very different conversation. I have often been more involved with passive candidates in a lot of the situations I've recruited for, just because the skill set. technology IT candidates tend to always be in a very, very low percentage for unemployment. So it's very often close to zero unemployment when you take in all the factors. So a lot of the passive candidates, or a lot of the candidates are passive. When I talk with the hiring manager, I let them know, this person is passive. I approached them. I reached out to them proactively. They expressed interest and came back, but you really need to have a deep dive conversation with them about, why you're here and what makes your group different and this what this job is good for. So I think that's kind of it's very different. Active candidates, I do think there's also an expectation you have to set with them with hiring managers, because the hiring managers need to understand that this person is applying actively and probably has a lot of interviews and they have offers. So we can't, you have to speed up the process.
What advice would you give to somebody maybe like 20, 25 years into the industry that always has been set in their ways, doing the same thing over and over again and adapting to this new way of recruiting and sourcing?
It's funny. I've worked with both sides, right? I've worked with people who all they know is all the technology and the tools, and people who, are kind of started like I did and still want to work that way. I mean, you have to embrace it. There's just no option. And I think finding things that work for you, I think that's the key. Are you more of are you a LinkedIn person? Are you a higher EZ person? Are you an AI type person, or do you want to take control of everything and every piece of messaging? Do you want to send your own messages multiple times? Like, how do you want to do it? But I think no matter what, you have to embrace it. You have to pick something that works for you. And one of the things, I will say, one of the things for me has been texting. It's been a really great advantage that exists in the world today with hiring that I'm still kind of on the fence about, right? Like, but I do it. I know I have candidates that the only way I'm going to hear back from them is to text them. And so I do. Um, I just think you just have to dive in.
And when it's a good topic, texting. What part of the process do you start that conversation in a text form? Is it right away? Is it after they're in process? Is it after
Yep.
they interview? Walk me through your thought process and strategies in texting candidates.
I do not do it right off the bat. In fact, I really don't. I will not do it unless I have, I've run into situations where people are in an environment during the day where they don't have service or they can't check their phones, whatever. Those are people I might text. So I know when they open their phone later, they'll see it. If I've got somebody that's way down in the process and we need to change an interview time, or we need to, they've accepted an offer and I need them to, complete something. That's kind of when I use texting. I feel like I need to have a little bit of a relationship with them before I start texting. That's not everybody. Some people are, they send text out as their initial, point of contact. But for me, it's definitely further down in the process.
I love that because you're building that relationship that kind of extends farther than just a generated email.
Right. Exactly.
As we build relationships with candidates, do you have any specific tips for re-engaging former candidates that you've spoken to? How do you re-engage those candidates? Maybe they weren't right for this specific role, but
Yep.
they are going to be in the future.
I always tell people I am nothing if not honest. So I will shoot them a message, usually email, and say, hey, we talked last summer. The role wasn't a fit, got closed, whatever. We've had this new opportunity come up. I thought about you, or the team mentioned you. Can we have a conversation? Oh, and by the way, here are the job details. And a lot of times it goes well. Again, response is a win, even if it's thanks, but I've got another opportunity. Thanks for checking with me, because that just further builds that relationship. If they look again, they'll reach out. If they have a friend that's looking, they'll reach out. And it actually does happen a good bit. And I heard from somebody the other day that I placed into a role 11 years ago when I was on like an agency side role. And I had forgotten about her. I mean, I remembered her as soon as she messaged, but sometimes they come back to me too. And I think if candidates feel comfortable doing that, we kind of need to feel comfortable going back to them because things change.
Thinking about the recruiting landscape in 2024, what qualities and skills do you believe are essential for recruiters who aim to be at the top of their game?
Yeah. So this was an interesting one that I kind of jotted down some notes on. I feel like you have to be the first thing I wrote down, just I did kind of an off the top of my head thing, was ability to work independently. Because in a lot of situations, talent acquisition teams run lean in a lot of situations, a lot of cases. And I think being able to run your desk, as we used to say, back in the old school days, and be able to come in each day with a plan, that is, I think, so critical. And I think it's just, being able to ask really relevant questions at the intake stage for requisitions. I think that takes experience. But I think the other piece of it that kind of goes along with that, don't be afraid to use templates, checklists, things like I still do it. I've been doing this forever and I still use templates and checklists to make sure I ask all the right questions, all the things that I know I'm going to need to know. Um, and I think being able to learn how to sort of gauge candidates as far as discerning their viability. It could be things like, are they really committed to this path, even going through the process? Are they committed on comp? Do we know their comp? Or, are they a personality fit? Because I think when you start out, every candidate, you're just convinced is going to be the one. And I think as you get some experience, you kind of have to start again. I think it all goes back. You really have to listen to what people are telling you. Sometimes between the lines, you really just have to pay attention. So I think those are kind of, being asked the questions, have checklists, have notes, have templates, and be able to take things and kind of run with them.
Could you share a story or a person who has significantly influenced your career in recruiting? Like, how did their guidance or mentorship impact your journey?
So I have two. I could not pick one. There's two that really came to mind. And interestingly, one is at the very beginning of my career and one is more current. The first one is the first person. I felt like she kind of took a chance on me. I'd been working in basically as a recruiting admin role for the consultancy firm, and friend of a friend network. This person took a chance on me and hired me to be a technical recruiter they did retained search. They had two huge clients in Atlanta for IT. And they sent me to a boot camp to learn. It was IT for IT recruiters. And they literally told you what a network was and what a programming language was and database, like how it all worked together. So she believed in me when I had no idea what I was doing, but she just saw potential. And I'm still in touch with her today. She owned her own firm. She had to close her company, but she cared so much about me and my path that she put me on contract at one of her clients for a while as a recruiter. And it was just very inspiring. And my more current situation is my current leader, my current director. She has a strength, I guess, or a superpower for looking kind of into people and figuring out where they really do have strengths and where they can grow those strengths and how, and really gives those people a voice, I think, to do the things that they need to do to be successful, because it's not the same for everybody.
I think the best leaders understand that not everybody is the same, but they all have strengths.
Yep.
And seeing that and placing them in a position to succeed in an environment they can succeed at
Mhm.
is a skill that can't be taught.
Yep.
Sometimes it's just they have the act of doing it, which is
Yep.
pretty cool.
And to see everybody has strengths, everybody has skills that they're good at, and then everybody's got quirks. And I like she kind of looks at them as quirks, not flaws. And it's how do you work with that quirk versus how do you stop it? Because you really can't change people, right? It's how do you turn that into something productive?
And that's what the recruiting community is all about is giving people an opportunity to succeed, giving them the foundation and the environment to succeed in and elevating their career, which is pretty awesome to hear. Favorite rec tool? Like I have to go to the Chrome store right now and I can't recruit in 2024 without this.
I mean, not to be, weird, but I mean, speeEZ, I'm in there every day. I use, I've used other tools over the years. I think the aggregation, anything that does an aggregation, and I think Indeed also does it. There's some other ones. Anybody that kind of aggregates profiles from other sources, those are the tools where I want to spend my time, because I just can't go to every site. And I think that's kind of what happened is over time, things have come out like a speeEZ where you're pulling stuff from other sources and frankly sources where I may not look, like Google. Google is one of the things that you guys pull in from. I've never searched Google for candidates, but I see them now.
What's your go-to interview question that has proven effective in assessing candidates at the early on stage?
I have a checklist that I go through when I talk to a candidate. My questioning changes depending on the person. I'm a talker, I'm a friendly person, and I gauge them against me, right? If they're not a big talker, I kind of just go through the list. I don't really ask any engaging questions. There's two things I always ask. Why are you looking to make a change? Because that can guide the rest of your conversation. And I always, no matter what, I start with that and I always close with, was there something you were hoping to learn today that I haven't gone over yet or that I missed? Some people are nervous and they say, no, there's nothing. And they email you later. And I tell people that's okay. If you don't think of it now, you can send me an email. But those are two always must haves. I think when I talk to managers, I don't get into these questions, but I kind of advise like, ask them questions like, how do you deal with a failure? How do you handle something that's assigned to you in a task or part of a project or whatever that you're either uncomfortable with or know isn't possible? I try to get them to ask that and not, if I was a tree, what kind of tree would I be? Right. Like ask things that are really relevant to the personality and the role.
On the flip side, the recruiting industry has been getting crushed with a ton of layoffs and stuff like that. What advice would you give to the recruiting community trying to land their next opportunity?
It's painful to watch. I see it daily, and it really is painful to the folks that are looking. I just be persistent and do the things you tell your candidates to do. Make connections that make sense. Don't just spam out, right? Like make connections that make sense. Identify places you want to work. Identify people that work there, and be strategic. It's hard. I mean, it's just you have to be diligent and you have to be persistent. And I think I think the old school networking tactic is really the thing that's going to do it.
And when you mean old school, define that. What does that mean?
It's funny. I just because back in the day when I started, you had networking events, right? And you go with put your little name tag on, take your business cards, and you ask. Or I go to technology focused ones, obviously, and you get all these business cards from people, and that was networking. But then you had all these cards. So when something came up and you said, "Oh, I need a graphic designer," oh yeah, I talked to this guy. I need to pull his card out. I think the same thing goes for now. It's just happening in a different platform. And there are this networking event. I was part of the start of it in 2008 here where I live, for technology professional, and it has evolved over the years. But now it's a virtual. They have a virtual coffee talk every week, so it's still but it's updated. It's kind of staying with the trends, so people can do stuff online. So I think still getting involved in that stuff, kind of getting over some people are nervous, some people are introverted, whatever. Just kind of put yourself out there. You
For
just
sure.
never know. And I think that's the thing. A lot of the people I know that are successful, that are in roles, myself included, other people I've worked with, they're in their role because they network with somebody.
I think too, sometimes with the vast majority of technology out there, we kind of can behind the screen a little bit.
Yep.
But even like taking the leap of faith to get involved in a networking group and jumping on the Zoom meeting and actually speaking up, or taking it further of trying to do a local one that's
Yep.
in person, or
Yep.
jumping on a phone call, say, "Hey, can you jump on a phone with me?" and kind of connect that way. I think networking's never going to get out of this industry. We're a people business and we need to
Yep.
keep it a people business. It's just done differently, like you said.
It is. And I think the other piece that kind of pops in my head too is, and I've had to do this when I was in, transition, whether it was from layoffs or whatever happened. Sometimes you have to sort of like, I hate this phrase, but like drop back and punt. Sometimes you have to say, you know what, I'm going to take this role that's adjacent to what I really want to be doing. Um, it's, and it's not going to be my long term thing. It's not going to be my career, or the company I want to stay with, but you're going to gain some skills and you're going to keep working at your job search.
Last question. Reflecting on your whole career, what do you think the proudest accomplishment you've done so far?
I kind of thought about this because this is one of the standard interview questions that a lot of people ask. I think for me, and I will kind of credit my most recent director with this. I think it's finally realizing and appreciating the fact that I have value and insight from my years of experience that is actually valuable and helpful. And it's helpful to people on my team. It's helpful to my hiring managers. It's helpful to my candidates. And saying, okay, you know what? I do have something to bring to the table, and this is important. And I'm finally starting to realize that and use it.
Sometimes starting a new company or starting a new team, you get imposter syndrome and you're like,
Yep.
the experiences that I've had, is that even relevant? Or you assume, hey, everybody else knows the knowledge I have. But 9 times out of 10, people don't.
Yep.
And you have to have the bravery and the courage to just step up and share your experiences.
Yep. I've learned in a group, you're usually, if you have a question or you don't understand something or you want to know how to do it better, you are most likely not the only person who is wondering it. So, yeah.
As we wrap up, any last highlights or anything else that you want to share?
I don't. I think this is one of the most, crazy careers. I never thought I would be in this. I love it. It's fascinating. I have met some of the most amazing people, and I've learned a lot. And I wish it was, I wish more people could experience it and kind of see what it does look like on the side of the desk. But I'm extremely happy I'm in this world.
Awesome. Well, as we wrap up today's episode with Dana, she has given us a fascinating glimpse of the world of talent acquisition and recruiting. Her expertise, combined with a deep passion for creating meaningful connections, showcases the power of recruiting. I want to thank her for joining today. And don't forget to join us again every Monday as another speakeZ podcast drops. So make sure you listen, subscribe, and share with the recruiting community so we all can learn from industry trailblazers like Dana. Thanks again, Dana, for coming onto the podcast and sharing your wisdom. And for everyone else, we'll see you next time.